Will you look at that? I finally got an episode of What If, Marvel's What If, reviewed in time. It did air last night slash this morning. This episode discusses what if Doctor Strange lost not his hands, but his heart. Basically, instead of Doctor Strange's accident preventing him from having hand injuries that would lead him eventually to becoming the Sorcerer Supreme, it is the death, the untimely death of Christine Palmer, played by Rachel McAdams in the movie, if you remember, that would lead him this time on the path to becoming Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, the Master of the Mystic Arts. That's what happens in this reality. And I use the word reality because it's different from a timeline. The time stone is well established here. We know there are alternate timelines, but with the multiverses, you have different realities altogether. And you could say that there are different timelines, but even the time stone itself can't really do much here. And we're going to go into it. But, if you saw the episode, you know what I'm talking about. Christine and Steven get into a car accident at the beginning of the episode. She dies. That leads him into going and becoming the Sorcerer Supreme. And then the events of Doctor Strange, the film, play out pretty similar, where he confronts Dormammu, he uses the Time Stone to outsmart Dormammu and defeat him, and then he chooses to use the Time Stone to try to go back and save, well, not save, I guess it is a version of saving, prevent her from dying. This storyline, like this idea, is not the first time we've seen this. This is the plot of the 2002 Guy Pearce film, The Time Machine. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's very similar where, Guy Pearce's character loses his girlfriend, she dies, and he makes a time machine to go back in time and stop her from dying. But every time that he goes back in time to stop her from dying one way, she dies another way, kind of like Final Destination. In fact, the idea here of this sort of predestination paradox is like the continuing story that we're seeing even with this episode. And we find out pretty early on in the episode that she has to die because in this reality, unlike the main MCU timeline, her dying is what leads him. I think the Ancient One actually refers to it as like a critical point in time or something like that. But anyways, her dying is what leads him into becoming Doctor Strange, the Master of the Mystic Arts, and that cannot be undone because it's a crucial point in time. He would never become Doctor Strange, learn how to use the Time Stone to go back in time and save her. And again, if you've seen The Time Machine from 2002, you know that it's very, very similar. You know it's very, very similar in that film, kind of the predestination paradox. It's kind of like the whole idea where if you build a time machine to go back in time and like save your mother from dying, for example, you will never be able to do it. Something in the fabric of time will always sort of push her into dying because she has to die in order for you to have the will to create the time machine to go back in time. It's the same thing here. She had to die in order for Strange to have the will to become the Sorcerer Supreme. But he goes off on this quest to try to get answers. Doctor Strange seeks to find the Sorcerer Cagliostro because according to legend, he knew how to break this crucial point in time and maybe break this like time curse that he seems to be in. I guess that's the best way to describe it, right? Like a time curse. So Strange learns that in order for him to properly cast this spell, he has to take the energy, the power from other beings. Now, we're going down a very dark path. This is not like Goku did in Dragon Ball Z with the Genki Dama, the Spirit Bomb. We're going down a real dark path because this is not a very heroic thing to do by taking other people's power, but he needs to gather up this energy, this power, in order to properly cast the spell. And so he goes on this quest fighting these monsters, taking their power, building it up to properly do this. And it really goes to show what kind of crazy things we'll do for love and we'll do to bring back our loved ones. And it makes you wonder, like if you were Doctor Strange and you were given this choice, let's say you had the love of your life die in a car accident, and in order to bring her back to life, you had to commit these acts on other beings. Like, would you do it? Would you go and do, as they said in the Endgame trailer, whatever it takes? Or do your ethics and your morals just kind of say, well, it is what it is. I lost her, but now I have a new purpose in life. You know, it is a deep question because I don't think a lot of people would really be able to be honest with themselves here. You know what I'm saying? Leave a comment down below and be honest with yourself about what you would do. Then things get more complex as the Ancient One has to step in and split the timeline. So there's two different timelines in one of the alternate universes. You know, it's a little complex because depending on what version of fiction you're watching when it comes to time travel and whatnot, it's difficult to really gauge, you know, how this really works. But just try to understand that even though there are alternate universes in the MCU, each universe has multiple timelines, which allows for infinite possibilities and infinite things to go on. So in the MCU, that would mean that there might be different TVAs as well. Possibly. It's difficult because in Loki they kind of explain that the TVA is there to prevent multiple timelines and multiple multiverses from being created, but apparently they were already there the whole time. It's a bit of a mindfuck, honestly. And like I've said 1,000 times before, any story involving time travel is going to have some degree of plot hole because of how difficult it is to tell a proper time travel story in fiction. So yeah, but it makes sense for the context of this episode. So because there are two Stephen Stranges, it's Doctor Strange versus Doctor Strange in the big sort of climax of the episode where he's trying to talk himself into not being so obsessive over Christine and to understand that the world needs him. You know, really good stuff in this episode. Maybe not the most fun episode. I would say episode 2 is the most fun. Episode 3 of Marvel What If is probably my favorite so far. But this one definitely is the most thought-provoking of all the episodes, and probably the one that has probably the best character development and character moments. I would say that goes to this episode, episode 4. And I like that every episode has its own strengths and weaknesses. This one being focused on one character and not a group, I think was really beneficial for telling the story properly. This fight with the two Doctor Stranges is pretty damn awesome. And I really love the metaphor at the end of how much of a monster Doctor Strange became. Really, really good stuff. Like I said, very thought-provoking, very emotional, very powerful. Really, really good episode of What If. Do you agree with me? Did you think it was the most thought-provoking one? Did you think it was weaker? I mean, I loved it. And this is kind of the stuff that I wanted to see from this show. Like things like this that can kind of add layers to characters. Because even though this didn't happen in the main MCU canon, it's okay because like we still are getting a glimpse into Doctor Strange as a character and things that he has done and things that he says and things that he would do should he be faced with this kind of situation. Thank you once again for watching the review. What'd you think? Let me know. I'll talk to y'all soon.